The crowd was losing its mind. Cameras flashing, people screaming, chants of McGregor. McGregor, echoing through the arena like thunder. The air was thick with adrenaline and sweat, that electric rush only a fighter could understand. But behind the locker room door, there was silence. No crowd, no cheers, just the sound of his own breathing, slow, heavy, uneven. Conor sat on the bench, elbows on his knees, head down. The victory's still fresh, another knockout, another headline, but it felt empty. The walls of the locker room were plastered with posters, the floor littered with hand wraps, ice packs, water bottles. It looked like chaos. But to him, it felt like a church after the sermon. All the noise gone, leaving only the echo of what mattered. His gloves were still on the floor. He didn't bother to pick them up. He just stared at them, like they were two pieces of his old self, left behind in a place he no longer recognized. He thought of his old gym, the smell of dust and rubber mats, the sound of rain leaking through the roof, his coach's voice cutting through the noise. Again, Conor. Hands up. Always hands up. You don't quit when you're tired. You quit when you're done. That voice had been there since the beginning. Rough, steady, the kind that made you believe you could crawl through hell if you had to. His phone buzzed. He ignored it once, twice. The third time, he reached for it, more out of habit than curiosity. One message, from an old number he hadn't seen in years. Conor, it's Sean. I don't know if you heard. Mick passed away last night. He read it twice. Then again. The words didn't sink in, not right away. They just floated there, heavy and hollow at the same time. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The fluorescent light flickered above him, buzzing softly like a fly trapped in glass. Mick Donovan, his first coach, the man who gave him gloves when he couldn't afford them, the one who said, I don't train champions. I train fighters. Conor exhaled through his nose, the kind of breath that hurts on the way out. He turned the phone face down on the bench and rubbed his temples. Outside, the celebration grew louder, reporters shouting, the sound of his name echoing off the walls. But inside that room, it was like all the noise in the world had been swallowed by silence. He closed his eyes. For a second, the fighter was gone. All that was left was a boy from Dublin, barefoot in a gym, throwing wild punches under the voice of a man who believed in him before anyone else did. And in that silence, he whispered, barely audible even to himself. You were right, Mick. I didn't quit. But maybe I should have called. The next morning came slow, gray skies over Dublin, rain sliding down the window like the city itself was mourning. Conor hadn't slept. The adrenaline was gone. All that was left was the ache in his chest, the kind that no ice bath or recovery drink could fix. His phone kept lighting up, reporters, sponsors, messages from friends celebrating his win. But none of it mattered. Every vibration felt louder than it should, like the world was screaming about something that didn't mean a damn thing anymore. He sat at the kitchen table, bare-chested, a cup of untouched coffee in front of him, staring at nothing. A headline on his phone blinked. McGregor dominates again. He scrolled past it, his thumb stopping on an old message from Mick. It was from years ago. Don't forget where you started, lad. You'll need those roots when the sky gets too high. He read it 5 times. And then, without thinking, he grabbed his keys. The drive across the city was quiet. No music, no phone calls. Just the low hum of the engine and the rain tapping against the windshield. The city blurred by, kids in hoodies running through puddles, old men smoking outside pubs, the same streets he used to walk barefoot with a gym bag over his shoulder. When he pulled up to the old boxing gym, his chest tightened. The sign was half-faded now, Donovan's Gym, the paint peeling, letters missing. The door creaked when he pushed it open. Inside, time had stopped. The air was thick with dust and memories. The same torn posters of fighters from the 80s clung to the walls. The heavy bag in the corner still swayed slightly, as if someone had just thrown a punch. Conor walked slowly, his footsteps echoing on the concrete floor. He ran his hand along the ropes of the ring. The same ropes Mick used to wrap his knuckles with when he was too broke to buy tape. For a second, he could hear him. That voice, rough but warm. Keep your chin down, lad. You can lose the fight, but don't lose your heart. He swallowed hard. Then a sound broke the silence. A soft thud, somewhere near the back. He turned and saw him. A kid, maybe 17. Slim, tired eyes, mopping the floor near the lockers. The resemblance hit him like a jab. Same dark hair, same determined stare. The boy looked up, startled. You're McGregor. Conor gave a faint smile. Not today, kid. Just Conor. The boy nodded slowly, gripping the mop like a lifeline. You knew my dad. Conor froze. He didn't have to ask who he meant. The boy's voice cracked slightly. We had to sell the house. But I couldn't leave this place. He built it. Conor glanced around. The cracked mirrors, the broken speed bag, the smell of old gloves. It was falling apart, but the soul of the place was still there. He exhaled slowly, the weight of the room pressing against his chest. Then he said quietly, he didn't build a gym, kid. He built fighters. The boy looked down. He said you'd come back one day. Conor stood there, silent, eyes glistening under the flickering gym light. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a champion. He just felt like someone's student again. Conor stepped out of the gym and into the cold Dublin rain. The door creaked shut behind him, but the sound of the boy's voice stayed in his head, trembling, proud, far too grown for his age. He stood there for a moment, just breathing. The air was damp, smelling of asphalt and memories. He looked up at the cracked sign above the entrance, Donovan's Gym, letters half gone, like time was slowly erasing everything that mattered. He pulled his hood over his head and leaned against his car, staring at the reflection of the gym in a puddle. The place looked small, fragile, but alive because of that kid. Mick's kid, the one still sweeping floors and holding on to what little was left. Conor clenched his jaw. He'd spent years proving he was the toughest man in every room. But right now, he felt weak, like all his strength meant nothing if he couldn't protect the people who gave him his start. He remembered that day, years ago, when he first met Mick. He was just a skinny kid who thought anger was a fighting style. Mick had watched him throw wild punches and said, "You're fast, lad, but if you fight for yourself, you'll burn out. Fight for something bigger." At the time, Conor didn't understand. He thought fame was that something bigger. Now he knew better. He ran his hand over his face, wiped the rain from his beard, and whispered, "You were right, coach. Always were." He got into the car and just sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel. His phone buzzed again. Another sponsor deal, another commercial. He swiped it away and scrolled to his contacts until he found one name, Patrick O'Reilly, legal advisor. He hit call. "Patrick," he said quietly, voice steady but low. "I need you to set up something for me." "Another business deal?" Patrick asked. "No," Conor replied. "Something personal." There was a pause. "What's it about?" Conor stared through the windshield at the gym. The boy had come outside now, dragging a trash bag toward the bins, soaked through from the rain. He didn't even look up, just kept working. "I want you to find the name of Mick Donovan's son," Conor said. "Enroll him in school. University, trade, whatever he wants. Pay the whole thing." Patrick hesitated. "Under your name?" "No," Conor said firmly. "Anonymous. If he finds out, it'll ruin it. Just make sure it's done." Patrick sighed. "Conor, that's not a small thing." Conor leaned back in the seat, his eyes still on the kid in the rain. "It's smaller than what his dad did for me." He hung up before the lawyer could answer. The rain hit the windshield harder now, blurring the gym into streaks of gray and gold from the streetlights. Conor sat there a long time, watching, remembering. The noise of the city faded until it was just the sound of rain and his own thoughts. Then he smiled, just a little, and whispered, "He built fighters. Now it's my turn." He started the car, the engine rumbling like distant thunder, and drove off into the night. No cameras, no entourage, no headlines. Just one fighter keeping a promise to the man who taught him what strength really means. A year passed, but for Conor, it didn't feel like time moving forward. It felt like pages turning in a book he was no longer reading. He was still fighting, still training, still living the same loud life the world loved to watch. Cameras, interviews, lavish nights, noise everywhere. But in the quiet moments, when the crowd was gone and the gloves were off, he always thought about that kid in the rain. Every month, without fail, his lawyer sent him a short update. Tuition covered, housing paid, student progressing well. No name, no photos, just proof that it was happening. And that was enough. He never told anyone. Not his manager, not his family, not the press. It wasn't for them. It wasn't for a headline. It was between him and Mick, an unspoken continuation of a promise made long ago. But the world kept spinning, and so did his career. More fights, more wins, more eyes on him than ever before. And yet, every time the arena lights went out, the silence hit harder. He'd sit alone in hotel rooms after the chaos, the smell of blood and tape still on his hands, thinking about how Mick would have hated all of this. The money, the fame, the empty noise. One night, in his penthouse overlooking the city, Conor stood at the window holding a glass of water. The skyline shimmered with gold and blue, double and glowing like it never used to when he was a kid. He could see the reflection of his own face in the glass. Older now, sharper, lonelier. He set the glass down, walked to his gym bag, and unzipped it. Inside were his first gloves, torn, faded, the padding half gone. Mick had given them to him when he was 16. He hadn't touched them in years. There was a note tucked inside, folded and yellowed with time. He unfolded it slowly, almost afraid of what it would say. It was written in Mick's messy handwriting. "You'll make it someday, lad. Just remember, when you win, someone else should too." Conor sat there in silence, reading it again and again until the ink blurred through his tears. He picked up his phone, scrolled to Patrick's number, and typed a message. "How's the kid doing these days?" The reply came quick. "He's not a kid anymore. Finished his first year. Working part-time at the old gym. Seems he's trying to keep it open." Conor stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. His heart thudded once, hard. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and looked in the mirror. His reflection stared back, the fighter the world saw, but not the man he felt like inside. He muttered under his breath, "Maybe it's time I go back." He left the glass half full, the lights still on, and the door unlocked, like a man walking out of one chapter and straight into another. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city was breathing quietly. And somewhere across town, in a small, half-forgotten gym, a young man was sweeping the same floor his father once did, unaware that the person who had kept his dream alive was already on his way back. The next morning, Conor stood outside the old gym again, but this time, the street didn't look so forgotten. The air felt lighter, alive. The cracked sign had been painted over, the letters clear again, Donovan's boxing gym. He smiled without meaning to. Through the open doors came the sound of gloves hitting leather, fast, rhythmic, confident. Not the clumsy echoes of a dying place, but the heartbeat of something reborn. He stepped inside slowly, the smell of chalk and sweat washing over him like a memory he didn't know he missed. It was different now. The broken mirrors had been replaced. The ring ropes were new, tight, and clean. On the far wall, he noticed a photo of Mick, framed, lit by a single bulb above it. Beneath it, written in black marker, "He built fighters, not egos." Conor's throat tightened. He didn't need to ask who had done all this. He already knew. At the far end of the gym, a group of kids were training. 6, maybe 7 of them, gloves too big for their hands. And there, between them, barking encouragement with a voice too familiar for its age, was Mick's son. Taller now, broader, with the same spark in his eyes his father used to have. "Hands up. Keep your guard tight," he yelled, his tone half strict, half caring. The kids laughed, one of them tripped, and he helped him up with a grin. Conor stood still, watching. The years between them evaporated. It was like seeing Mick all over again. Same movements, same way of correcting without crushing someone's spirit. Then, the boy looked up. For a moment, their eyes met. Recognition flickered, but not of celebrity, of memory. He didn't see McGregor, the fighter. He saw the man who'd once stood in the same place as him. A kid chasing a dream that felt too far away. The boy nodded once, polite, cautious, then turned back to the kids. "All right, that's enough for today. Stretch it out." When the class ended, he walked toward Conor, wiping his hands with a towel. "You came back," he said quietly. Conor shrugged, trying to play it off. "Old habits. I used to clean this floor once." The boy smiled faintly. "My dad said you never stopped fighting. Said you had more heart than sense." Conor laughed under his breath. He wasn't wrong. They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the hum of jump ropes and laughter, the smell of sweat and sawdust. A place that shouldn't have survived, but did. Conor looked around the gym once more, then back at the boy. "You did all this?" The boy nodded. "Couldn't let it die? He built it for people like you. Like me." Conor swallowed hard. He wanted to tell him everything, about the money, the help, the promise. But he didn't. That wasn't why he came. Instead, he said, "You've done him proud. The boy's eyes softened. I hope so. He used to say real fighters don't need spotlights. They just keep showing up. Conor smiled, small, honest, a little broken. Sounds like something he'd say. He reached out, clapped the boy on the shoulder. Keep it alive, kid. Don't ever let the light go out. Then he turned to leave, his reflection catching in the old gym mirror. Not the brash champion, not the loud icon. Just a man carrying the legacy of another. As he stepped into the daylight, he whispered, "You built fighters, Mick. And they're still fighting." For a few weeks after Conor's visit, the gym stayed busy, busier than ever. Kids trained harder, more people came to watch, and a new kind of energy filled the air. It wasn't just about fighting anymore, it was about legacy, about keeping something alive. But one evening, as the boy, Liam, was closing up, an envelope slid through the mail slot in the door. No name, no stamp, no address. Just a plain white envelope, thick and folded once. He frowned, wiped his hands, and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a note written in clean handwriting. Your tuition and training have been covered for the next 2 years. Consider it an investment, not in a fighter, but in a man. Make him proud. No signature, just a small emblem printed at the bottom, an Irish flag, faintly smudged. Liam froze. His heart started to pound. He'd seen that emblem before, on the gloves in the case above the ring. McGregor's gloves. He turned the paper over, looked again, as if a name would suddenly appear. But there was nothing else. He sat on the ring edge for a long time, reading the note again and again. The words weren't flashy, but they carried weight, the kind of truth you could feel in your chest. Then, quietly, he whispered, it was him. The next day, he told no one. Not the kids, not the staff, not even his mother. He just showed up early, unlocked the doors, and cleaned every inch of the gym before training started, like it was his way of saying thank you. But something in him changed. The boy who once trained out of desperation now trained with purpose. He wasn't just keeping the gym alive anymore. He was honoring 2 men. His father, who built fighters, and the one who proved that real champions never stop giving back. Later that night, as he switched off the gym lights, he stopped by Mick's photo on the wall and said softly, I think you'd like what he's become. And somewhere across the city, Conor sat alone in his car outside a quiet bar, scrolling through social media. No posts about charity, no interviews, nothing. Just photos of that same gym alive again, filled with laughter and noise. He smiled, pocketed his phone, and said under his breath, Good lad, you're doing just fine. Then he started the car and drove into the night. No spotlight, no applause, just peace. Weeks later, life went on. Fights, travel, interviews, headlines. Conor moved through it all like a man half there. The world saw his fists. Few saw his heart. Then one cold morning, while grabbing coffee near the waterfront, he saw a small news clip on a cafe TV. Local gym rebuilds community in memory of late trainer. The footage was short, kids hitting pads, laughter, hope. And in the background, he saw him, Liam Donovan. He was older now, focused, confident, leading drills like someone who'd found his purpose. On the wall behind him, the same framed photo of Mick hung proudly, with a new quote added underneath. Real fighters fight for others. Conor's lips curved into a quiet smile. He paid for his coffee and drove straight to the gym. When he arrived, Liam was alone, closing up for the day. He turned as Conor stepped inside. Didn't think you'd come back, Liam said with a half smile. Neither did I, Conor replied, hands in his pockets. But I saw the clip. You've built something special. Liam leaned against the ropes. You helped me do it. Conor raised a brow. What makes you think that? Liam pulled a folded note from his jacket, the anonymous letter. You left this, didn't you? Conor's jaw tightened. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly he nodded. Liam exhaled, eyes glassy but steady. I knew it wasn't charity. It was a lesson. My dad used to say, if someone gives you strength, you pass it on. Conor stepped closer, his voice low but firm. Your old man was right. He gave me my shot when I was nothing. You just reminded me what that meant. They stood in silence for a while, the kind that feels like peace, not distance. Finally, Conor said, You don't owe me thanks. You owe it to him. Keep his gym alive. Keep building fighters. Liam smiled faintly. That's the plan. Conor looked around the gym one last time. The punching bag swayed slightly, like the walls themselves were breathing. He nodded once, proud, quiet. Then he said the words that hung heavy, full of meaning and closure. He taught me how to fight. You reminded me why. He turned to leave. Liam's voice followed him softly. You're always welcome here, coach. Conor paused at the doorway, grinned just a little, and replied without turning around. Nah, you're the coach now. And with that, he walked into the cold Dublin night. No crowd, no cameras, just the echo of gloves hitting leather behind him. The sound of legacy continuing. The months that followed felt like calm after a storm. Conor went back to training, to press conferences, to the endless circus that came with being him. But something inside had shifted. The noise didn't get to him the same way anymore. He'd always been the man people expected to roar, the fighter who never backed down, the headline that never stopped writing itself. But now, he found more peace in quiet places. Early morning runs by the sea, afternoons at small local gyms, nights spent watching kids train the way he once did. And sometimes, between sparring rounds or interviews, he'd glance at his phone, not to check social media, but to look for updates about the gym. He didn't need details anymore. Just knowing it was alive was enough. Across town, Liam's life had changed too. He was still running Donovan's gym, but now it was something bigger than a place to fight. It had become a home, a second family for the lost kids, the broken ones, the ones who just needed someone to believe in them. He'd earned respect, not because of who his father was, but because of what he built himself. Every once in a while, a small donation would appear in the gym's account. No name, no message, just the same smudged Irish flag watermark. And every time, Liam would smile, shake his head, and whisper, "Still watching, huh?" One evening, after a long day of training, Liam walked to the photo on the wall, his father's photo, and looked at the quote beneath it. Real fighters fight for others. He added another line underneath, written in thick black marker. And real legends never stop. That same night, Conor was back home, wrapping his hands before a light spar. His coach asked, "You ready for another war, champ?" Conor smirked slightly. Not every fight's in the ring, mate. He shadowboxed in silence, each punch slower, more controlled, not driven by anger, but by gratitude. For Mick, for the lessons, for the chance to give back. And somewhere between the movement and the rhythm, he thought about the kid, the gym, and the legacy that had somehow come full circle. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was chasing something. He felt steady, whole. He stopped, unwrapped his hands, and looked at the gloves on the bench. The same ones Mick had given him all those years ago. He smiled softly, whispered into the quiet. They're in good hands now. Outside, the Dublin sky was deep blue, calm, endless, and alive. And in two different corners of the same city, two fighters, one seasoned, one rising, carried the same lesson in their hearts. That real strength isn't what you keep. It's what you give away. Weeks later, the city woke under a pale sunrise, and Dublin felt lighter than usual. Conor had just finished his morning run. Hoodie up, headphones out. No entourage, no cameras. Just him and the sound of his own breath on the quiet streets. He slowed to a walk as he reached a small bridge overlooking the Liffey. The water shimmered gold in the first light, the air crisp, the city still half asleep. He leaned on the railing, catching his breath, and thought of Mick. He always did in moments like this, when the noise stopped and the world felt simple again. It had been months since he'd last seen Liam, but that visit had stayed with him. The look in the boy's eyes, the way he carried himself, proud, grounded, kind. He reminded Conor of the fighter he'd once been before fame and fury blurred the edges. A car horn startled him from his thoughts. Two lads in a beat-up hatchback slowed beside the bridge. "Oi, McGregor," one of them yelled, hanging halfway out the window. "Legend, mate." Conor raised a hand, gave a small nod. They cheered and drove off, laughter echoing down the street. He smiled faintly. It was funny. Once, he lived for that attention. Now it felt like background noise. His phone buzzed. A message from Patrick, his lawyer. Gym renovation completed. The boy added a scholarship program, calls it the Donovan Initiative. Conor read it twice. The corners of his mouth lifted slowly. That kid doesn't stop, he thought. He opened Instagram, not to post, but to look. Liam had uploaded a photo. The same gym, now full of kids smiling, gloves raised in the air. In the middle of the group, Above the ring, a banner read, "For Mick. For every kid who needs a chance." And there, in the front row, was Liam, standing tall, proud, holding a pair of old, worn gloves. Conor recognized them instantly. His gloves, the first ones Mick had ever given him. He exhaled slowly. His chest tightened, not from sadness, but from something softer, deeper. Legacy. Full circle. He typed a comment under the photo, the first public thing he'd ever said about it. Just 4 words. He'd be proud, lad. No tag. No hashtag. No flex. Just truth. Then he locked his phone, pocketed it, and walked off the bridge toward a new day. Later that afternoon, Liam saw the comment. For a long moment, he just stared at the screen, silent, still, fighting back tears. He whispered, "Thanks, coach." Then he went back to the ring, whistled to the kids, and shouted, "Hands up, we've got work to do." And as gloves began to hit the pads again, the echo carried through the gym, sharp, rhythmic, alive. The sound of a dream passed down, not ended. Fight week. Cameras everywhere, headlines nonstop. But Conor moved through it differently this time. Calm, grounded, untouchable in a way that had nothing to do with fists. Reporters kept asking the same question. "What's your mindset for this fight?" He just smiled. "Peace," he said simply. "That's my mindset." In the locker room before the match, the air was thick with noise, trainers shouting, gloves snapping, cameras flashing. Conor sat quietly in the corner, hands wrapped, eyes closed. He wasn't thinking about his opponent. He was thinking about a dusty gym in Dublin, a man who taught him to fight, and a kid who learned to teach others. When the bell finally rang that night, he fought clean, not angry, not desperate. Every move was precise, measured. It wasn't about proving he was the best. It was about proving he still had heart. And when the fight ended, win or lose didn't matter. He stood in the center of the ring, hands down, breathing steady, eyes lifted toward the lights. He whispered quietly to himself, "That one was for you, Mick." No shout, no show, just truth. After the fight, Conor walked past the cameras and the crowd like a man passing through a dream. Reporters shouted questions about the match, the headlines, the money, but he didn't stop. He just smiled faintly and kept moving. Outside the arena, the night air hit him cool and clean. He pulled his hoodie over his head and started walking alone. No bodyguards, no noise, just the soft hum of the city and his thoughts. His body ached, but his mind was quiet. There was no fire in his chest, no need to prove anything. He had done what he came to do. Not for glory, not for revenge, for something far simpler. He stopped at a mural painted on a nearby wall, a massive piece showing kids boxing in an old gym. Above them, in bold white letters, "Real fighters build others." Conor stared at it for a while, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. He didn't know who painted it. Maybe one of the kids. Maybe Liam. But it didn't matter. The message was the same. He pulled out his phone, snapped a quick photo, and sent it to Patrick with a single line. Worth more than any belt. Then he tucked the phone away, shoved his hands in his pockets, and kept walking. For the first time in years, he felt light, not because he was done fighting, but because he finally understood what it was all for. Some fights aren't won in the ring. They're won in the way you live after the bell rings. The sun was just rising over Dublin when Conor parked near the gym one last time. The city was quiet. No traffic yet, just the early hum of life waking up. He sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, watching through the windshield as the first rays of light hit the old brick walls of Donovan's gym. He got out, hoodie up, unnoticed. Inside, he could already hear the thuds of gloves hitting pads, that familiar rhythm that once built his entire world. He stepped in quietly, leaning against the doorway. Liam was in the ring, working with a small boy, maybe 10 years old, skinny, scared, trying to find his balance. "Breathe, lad," Liam said, smiling. "You're not fighting the bag. You're learning from it." Conor smiled faintly. That line, "You're learning from it," was straight from Mick. The same words that shaped him, now shaping someone new. When the round ended, Liam looked up. Their eyes met. No surprise, no shock, just understanding. Conor raised a hand in greeting. Liam nodded back, wordless but grateful. Conor turned to leave. At the door, he paused, glancing at the photo wall one last time. Mick's face smiled back at him from a frame surrounded by notes, signatures, and quotes from students. Beneath it all, In big black letters, someone had written, "He built fighters. They built each other." Conor touched the frame lightly and whispered, "We did it, coach." Then he stepped outside into the morning light. The sky was wide and golden, the air sharp and alive. He put on his sunglasses, started his car, and smiled. The kind of quiet, full smile of a man who's finally found peace. And as he drove off through the waking streets of Dublin, the echo of gloves hitting leather faded behind him. But the legacy stayed. Not in the ring, not in the fame, but in every kid who dared to stand up and fight because someone believed they could. The real fight was never about winning. It was about passing it on.